Sometimes I want to do a video about all the problems in the world. I'll get a couple minutes in, I'll turn off the camera, and I'll leave, and I'll ignore it. I'll never go back to the notes I took, the ideas I had. This has happened dozens of times or more over the years. And I figure since it's a new year, it's a good time to address this, just in at least one video. How fucked up the world really is right now. But I still have hope. And I'm not one of those doomers who's going to sit here and say, you know, there's war, there's pestilence, starvation, everything's bad, everything kills you. I have more of the George Carlin attitude. A little bit cynical about the whole thing, you know. Everything's bad for you was his idea. You know, he didn't trust government, he didn't trust anybody. And he was a little rough around the edges. Let's just say that, but that's not the point. I was sitting here thinking about all the issues that are going on in the world, and then I was reading this article last night about how we just killed a top general in Iran. And I thought of all the Americans who are probably celebrating that as if it's some kind of a victory against the enemy. But understanding my own knowledge of history and of Iran and of the Middle East and the U.S.'s involvement, I've always put myself in the shoes of the locals, and I said, I cannot imagine having a foreign superpower in today's world dominating over your land that you live in with your family. And this isn't a political statement. This isn't a video about what the U.S. should or shouldn't do. It's just my personal opinion on the fact that I don't think we should be there in the first place. And because of this, I can have empathy and understand where they're coming from. Of course, a little bit of psychology allows you to understand how and why people do the things they do. And it's what allowed me to not believe in evil. And people tell me evil exists. It absolutely exists. And I say bullshit. I do not believe in evil. I do not believe in it as a negative force. What I believe in is ignorance. And you don't see evil in the animal kingdom, do you? So why would you see it in humans? You see it because humans have poor values, they're brought up poorly, they're not punished properly, and then there are exceptions where a person has a mental disorder and acts upon that. But as I was growing up, and I heard stories about the PMRC trying to ban music, and how movies had to have certain standards, and how they didn't want sex scenes, didn't want drug scenes, I used to just scoff at that until I became a parent and kind of cringed at some of the scenes that I see in even the 80s and 90s movies and with my kids. And I realized, well, it's just a natural tendency to want to protect your cubs. And protecting them against what really goes on in the world is nearly impossible, especially with the internet today. But there was a time when people could shelter their children from anything that may cause them grief or distress. I'm not going to say that was a good thing, because I believe that being aware of all the realities in the world is what's important. But I still understand letting your kid believe in Santa Claus, for example. There are some parents that are so strict about being truthful that they refuse to let their kids believe in anything. And hey, so be it. That's a choice. But the world we're living in today, we have eliminated a lot of the mysticism and mystery surrounding why what it means to be human. You know, what is an atom? You know, can we crack this atom? Can we understand quantum physics or quantum mechanics? Can we understand the universe? How far can we see with telescopes? It has blown the minds of so many people, every one of us who pays attention. It doesn't matter how scientific minded you are, how intelligent you are, or aware or educated you are. In fact, the more educated a person is, more likely the more mind blown they really are. Instead of saying, well, I've learned about the universe, I don't believe in anything. It's almost like what you would consider to be the syndrome of the more you learn, the more you say, wow, there's more to this. than we can express. There's an underlying archetype or a blueprint, or why are these certain patterns expressed over and over in nature? Why do mathematics exist? Why do they represent nature and natural progress, the shape of the seashell, the 1.618 Fibonacci sequence, all these different interesting mystical properties of life. But there are people who embrace those and people who completely blow it off. There are people who are dogmatic about their religion and that none of this other shit matters. And then there are people who are so atheist that they wouldn't know God if Jesus came down and landed in front of them. It wouldn't matter, because where we're at right now is not trying to compete and prove to one another that we know what's best or that we know what they should be believing. It's rather that we should agree that after all these thousands of years of disagreement, maybe, just maybe, we can come together on a few things and allow people to live their own lives in the way they see fit, as long as it's harming no one else. And maybe that's just asking too much, Maybe it's asking too much for peace in the world. But at 44 years old, I'm still fighting for it. I still believe in it. I still understand that there's a truth to be had there. And I just hope I meet more people that agree with that. As to how to approach that, I don't know. There was a time when we were declining our nuclear, arsenal. And then, just a week ago, I was going through some old paperwork and I found this newspaper clipping from the 90s. And it said, George Bush, approves baby nukes. And I remember the time I read the article, it was about how he was allowing basically tactical nuclear weapons to be manufactured again. Small ones that could be used in discrete warfare, right? There are no discrete nuclear weapons. The minute one drops, it's over. North Korea has the bomb. India has the bomb. Iran is creating the bomb, if they don't already have it. And then just the other day we killed their top general. And I say to Americans, can you imagine what it would be like if we find out that Iran had sent over a drone or a plane or anything and killed our top general in the United States? I just want people to stop for a minute and think about that. At least those who say, well, it's just warfare and the U.S. deserves to win, go U.S. Because I'm really trying to reach those people who are ignorant enough to believe, and instantly I offend someone by saying that, but to believe that the U.S. really has the right to be in the Middle East, that we have the right to dominate other people's way of life. And there was a time in the past where we were fooled, where we were told, well, it's terrorism. And as I've said before, it's just like saying it was communism in the 60s. If you can tell me that Vietnam was worth going into, then you can tell me why my dad died of Agent Orange poisoning when I was a kid. And you can tell me why all of these soldiers were killed needlessly by the Viet Cong because they were invading somebody else's homeland in the name of protecting democracy in a place that has nothing to do with the United States. We've been fooled for a long time, people. It's time to look outside the box. It's time for those patriots to realize that being a patriot doesn't mean just supporting mindlessly your government. Being a true patriot means supporting the country you live in. The world you live in it's very small. There was a time when it seemed like the world was so large. Everything has shrunk. There's nowhere to run anymore. There's nowhere to start a new civilization. If the button is pushed, it's over, people. And nuclear war has not become a priority for a lot of people. It's not something I really want to sit and talk about and, pretend like but I can't pretend like it's not going to happen or that it couldn't happen. So if it's not a nuclear war, it could be a virus, could be a solar flare that takes out the whole grid, it could be a major disaster of satellites, any type of warfare. But in the end, you and I, we will have to come together. Whether I'm a city dweller and you're a hillbilly, or I'm a Jew and you're a Muslim, or I'm black and you're white, it doesn't really matter in the end. What matters is how well we handle ourselves with other human beings and act respectful to one another. Thanks for listening.